Hey everyone, welcome to George's Library. This is George, and today I have a special trio of short stories that I want to talk to you about. Lyra's Oxford, Once Upon a Time in the North, and Serpentine by Phillip Pulman. Okay, so the reason I decided to go with all three short stories at the same time is, well, because they're really short. They're so short that I just didn't find any point in exploring them one by one. And also, frankly, I didn't feel like these three stories even feel like standalones at all. It felt more like the proper way to introduce them is as companions to the his Dark Materials series. So that's what I did. I'm just gonna pretty much talk a little bit about each one of them, um, and then let you decide by yourself if you feel like it's worth reading them or if not. So there you go. I'm gonna start with Serpentine, and then we'll go from there. Yeah. So I was desperately in search of reading something a little more lighter. I wanted a break from all the heavy reads and analytical contemplation of the world around us. And fantasy is usually a genre that I go confidently for that. I was quite tired of Philip Pullman and his series by the end of The Amber Spyglass. And I also sensed the author felt the same way towards his own series. I think I also mentioned that. The last book seemed lazy to me and forced. But, perhaps after 16 years from its publication, the author managed to find some spark of inspiration towards his series and towards this fascinating world that he built and carried on with some new stories within it. Now, Serpentine explores the events that happened 1 year after um, the main trilogy. More precisely, it follows the conversation between Lyra and Pan about their being able to separate and what that means for the both of them. Philip Pullman touches upon what it feels like to disconnect yourself from your own demon. Ultimately, that brings the analogy of what it means for us humans to disconnect ourselves from ourselves. What are the consequences of not being completely honest with ourselves? And how would that affect us? This is a very short story, mostly composed of dialogue, but it is worth the read if you are a fan of the main series. In Philip Pullman's words, these books are mainly about what it is to be human. And it is certainly nice to revisit that world and these characters, even if it's just for a short while. And this brings us to the second short story that I want to talk about, which is Once Upon a Time in the North. Now, this one is the longest of the three. This one I think covers 100 pages exactly in the volume that it's printed, and well, it's practically a prequel to the trilogy. This one explores a very young Lee Scoresby meeting a younger Yorick Burnison um, in a ship town, a port town somewhere. It is quite independent in its style. I think that, well, out of all three of them, this one is the short story that probably can actually stand on its own rather than um, being only a part of the trilogy. Like you can read this one without having to read the main trilogy, but I do believe it would make more sense if you read the main trilogy beforehand, just because some of the things won't be as confusing to you as they are now. Like this is quite it is quite an interesting world that Philip Pullman created. So, and I think it is better explained in the novels than it is in this short story. But nonetheless, of of the three, this is probably the one I would recommend reading as a standalone short story. Like I said, it's longer. It's split into two parts. The first part is pretty much setting the scene, introducing you to the characters, setting up the plot, getting things intrigued. And then the second part is all action and shooting, and you get to the conclusion of the story. It's a lot of politics. Um, it feels a lot, and I give Pullman credit for that, I guess. It does feel a lot like a western. It made me feel like watching a western movie. The way the tone of the story and the rhythm, the pacing, the way the characters are being introduced. You have this, you have the typical lone lone cowboy who walks into this new town and is, like Lee Scorpio is just, he's practically just looking for some gas, really. He just wants some gas so he can move on or even get a job or something, just make some extra cash while out there and to buy some gas and move on. And, he gets himself mixed up into this plot, this political plot with the people in the town. Like they're trying to vote for a new sheriff, a new leader, a new mayor, or whatever. And he's there to help. And that's pretty much the first part. He meets Yorick Burnison. They team up, and they go and they solve the problem. And the second part is pretty much them fighting, shooting, dealing with it. Um, I thought the first part was much better than the second part. I really thought the second part is boring. I just didn't have the patience for it. I didn't see the view of it. I don't know. Maybe it was just me. I just I I found it boring. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy reading the action bit of this. But the first part was, like it was an interesting setting. The one thing I have to complain about when it comes to Serpentine and Once Upon a Time in the North is the fact that they just feel a little bit soulless. They feel a little bit soulless. I feel like the spirit is not there anymore. It just doesn't have that mystery, that intrigue that the first novel of the His Dark Material series actually had. Still, I mean, if you're a fan of this world, and I would definitely give it a try. And this leads us to the last short story that I want to introduce, and that's Lyra's Oxford. This one is pretty much, I felt like this one had, out of all three, this one was the one that had a little bit of that magic of the novels, but just a little bit, and just for a very short while. This is longer than Serpentine, but shorter than Once Upon a Time in the North. It's kind of also an introduction to Pullman's new trilogy that came out, um, that I don't know much about really, but it kind of felt more like it's this sort of an interlude in between his old trilogy and the new trilogy that he's writing. That being said, I cannot say that it made me feel any more interested in the new trilogy. It didn't make me feel excited about whatever the new trilogy is. I am a little curious. I'm a little curious, and I'm not saying a complete no to reading that, but I don't feel like jumping into it right now, so I'm gonna pass for a while. This one I don't feel like it could stand on its own. I think you really need to read, well, I guess either the new trilogy or the old trilogy to have some sense of it. Otherwise, it has a plot, but it doesn't add up to anything really. That's the end of it, guys. I recommend these three short stories if you're a fan of the His Dark Material series. If you miss Lyra, if you miss the series, then by all means, I definitely recommend you giving these companions a try. They're not great. They're just companions. Like they're just an extra chapter to everything that was already said and done. I didn't feel like there was much value added to the main story, so you can definitely live without them. But well, I guess they're a nice collectible edition, and it's pretty much just about revisiting this world and revisiting these characters and spending a little bit more time with that story. So if you're a fan of the His Dark Material series, then I definitely recommend this for you. If you want to read something that is light and quick and very short, I would definitely recommend you trying these out. That being said, I hope you share and subscribe. Um, Stay safe, keep on reading, and see you next time.